Hello and welcome to this episode of the Horse No Name podcast. We are doing our Decade in Review podcast once again this week, and we have reached the 2016-17 academic year. It was a big year for women's sports at LBC, also a big year for some individual sports as well, as we'll see that through the rest of the decade as we go through this project. I am joined by my co-host, Bob McMichael, and our two guests tonight, or for this week anyway, are former student athletes Courtney Goyak and Hannah Gipe. Ladies, how are you today?
So good.
Wonderful to be here, Zach. Back to you.
Zach, this is going to be one of those nights that we will never forget. And I think we could have a lot of fun. These ladies already said once we finally found a time that worked for the four of us to Zoom together.
So sorry about that.
Oh, no, it's all good. I've never heard young ladies say, oh man, I don't even know what I'm going to look like at that time of night.
We're pushing my bedtime, so the things that might come out of my mouth, I am not responsible for.
It's going to be
getting a little bit better at the editing stuff, so I'll try to help you out as best I can. So
okay.
Nice. So 2016-17, Hannah, it was your second year at LBC. Courtney, it was your first. And you were both transfers to LBC. Hannah, since it was your second year, sort of transfer, I mean, new to LBC, what drew you to LBC?
Wow, that's so funny because when you say transfer, I was like, what? But so technically I was enrolled to go play at Clearwater Christian College, and kind of like the Northland situation, it closed down before I even had the chance to go. So I graduated high school, and the day after I graduated, I got a call saying that Clearwater had closed out of nowhere unexpectedly, and I had committed to go play there to play volleyball, and really had no plan B, no second plan. So went to a college fair that Clearwater was hosting. Actually, Josue Bosque, y'all would know that name, of course, with men's soccer, but we were both going to Clearwater that year, and we were at the LBC table with Kim Metzler, Josh Beers, just laughing, talking with Josh Beers, who's very convincing, of course, and just laughing about how we would never spend a winter that far north and deal with that much snow. And we both ended up going there and staying for a very long time. So he now lives there. And, but I just knew, long story short, I just had no doubts once I visited that, Clearwater, I feel like kind of closed to lead me to LBC just personally in my life, because I had so much confirmation that that's where God wanted me to go. So technically a transfer, but spent all my 4 years there. And yeah, that's my story in a second.
And Courtney, what about you? You were in Colorado first, correct? And then came over to LBC.
Actually, LBC was my third college that I went to. So I was in Colorado my freshman year and ended up transferring back home. And I was planning to go to Northland, but same situation, ended up closing down. So I just did online schooling with one of our state schools. And my intention was just to stay with that school until I graduated. I just didn't want to transfer again. And I was okay not playing basketball, and I kind of accepted that. And then when Northland closed down, Josh Beers is an alumni of Northland. So he kind of reached out on behalf of LBC and kind of brought in all the students. I had a lot of connections transfer out to LBC. And it was those people who recruited me. And kind of nagged on me and be like, hey, so I gave your name to the basketball coach. She might be in contact with you in 2 days. So
I'm just surprised she didn't come tackle you once she saw you, frankly. So that was a good find by Josh there. And it was a big year for Northlands and Clearwater. This is kind of those years where they closed, and we got some players that we weren't expecting for men's soccer specifically, and some of the volleyball and basketball as well. Just they kind of came about quickly, late in August or in midsummer, kind of when the teams were kind of set, and our coaches were able to work those details out. I know that the Pats boys played men's soccer. They were pretty good this year and years after this as well. So we're not going to go through each of your seasons like we've done with some other guests that we've had, but Hannah, I did want to kind of talk about the volleyball season a little bit with you. Pretty decent team, 2016. It was the last year for Coach Bewley. I wondered what you learned from her in your 2 seasons with her as the coach.
I learned so much, and it's so funny looking back because Coach Bewley and I are actually really, really close friends now. I actually just FaceTimed her early today. But but just having background on even the program before I came in 2015, Coach Bewley, I mean, really created the program from nothing into a slow 10 years of something, and I give her credit, a lot of credit, even dealing with, I mean, just unsuccessful seasons to lead to where we are now and to build off of nothing just into where we are today. And I'm so grateful to have been technically, not really, but kind of recruited by her and just been placed under her leadership. And she had to deal with a lot of struggles, different things that came in the 2 years that I was underneath her, but really she was such a formative part in my class that came in that year in 2015 and all the different coaching we had from then on. Coach Bewley really was the start of that and was the first one to introduce, the expectations of LBC athletics and the morals we stand by and kind of just our code of ethics and the things we believe in and the things that are bigger than ourselves that we are doing in athletics, playing volleyball for LBC.
That's great. And so before we kind of move along, I do want to kind of park for a little while anyway. During the semester, or right after the semester, I should say the first semester, the LBC community suffered, a terrible tragedy and some heartbreak with the passing of student athlete Alyssa Bowen. It sort of turned the year upside down for a lot of people on campus, for a lot of groups on campus, teams, departments, frankly, the entire LBC community. She had played volleyball in 2015-16, both the first 2 years you were there as well, and basketball the year before you got to LBC, Courtney. But obviously you were very aware of her and things like that. It's a small campus. Hannah, she was a teammate and a friend. What did she mean to you? How did her passing sort of bring your team specifically together before we talk about the whole LBC community?
Yes. Well, Alyssa was an amazing volleyball player, but a very close friend, and definitely just can't really put words to the tragedy of it all. But it was a very unique bonding experience for our team, I would say. And of course, we all grieved in different lengths and different times, and there's no timeline to grief, and it's not linear. But we are kind of forced to use it to either come closer together or kind of stay where we were. And she was an amazing athlete. I was so honored to come in the same year as her and be able to play those 2 years together. She was amazing on the court. I mean, those of us who got to play with her and watch her, she was just dynamic. And I mean, her stats show for that. The people, again, who just watched her, but a great teammate, a wonderful friend, just really cherished the time that I had with her. But it really, in reflection, looking back at that class that we came in with Alyssa, it bonded us together in a way that I couldn't have seen us coming together like that otherwise. I think leading into the seasons past that, it gave us a bond on the court and off that no one else in our conference I saw that bond. Of course, you would never wish that to happen to anybody, and we kept her passing in mind with us constantly. I remember ever since my freshman year, after every game, win or lose, you come in, you do the huddle, hands in for him. And after her passing, it was always every game thereafter, it was for him and her, just because we just always kept that in mind and kept her there with us and used it as motivation. Also just a reminder of how short life is and the greater purpose that we have here on earth. And she was an amazing reminder of that. And she's constantly was just in our hearts, and still think of her family constantly. So yeah, it's just something we will carry with us outside of volleyball for the rest of our lives, into every area of our lives. So it was so much more than just a part of our athletic careers. I mean, I think of the missions trip we took together with Push the Rock as a team that Christmas break right after her passing. And it was just so hard. Like, it was just honestly so hard to gather as a team so quickly after that tragedy, but it really, I think, grew us very quickly in a way that other teams don't get that opportunity. So yeah, just a long way of saying we kept her in our hearts, and she motivated us and pushed us towards a greater purpose than just volleyball, which really bonded us into something really special to come in the future, I think, as well.
And Courtney, you obviously knew Alyssa, and you guys were one of the first teams to play following her passing over Christmas break. What do you think bonded your team together through this experience, and maybe how did the school come together to bond together and to be together in something that the school hasn't gone through very often in its almost 90-year history?
Yeah. And I mean, for me, it being my first year at LBC too, I mean, it was just the first big thing that really happened on campus. And so it allowed me to really observe how our athletic department and how our school just handled grief and how we handled something that affected everybody. And it affected everyone in different ways. But I mean, I remember Vanderhoff calling me over Christmas break and telling me about the passing. And I remember when we came back at Christmas break, us talking a little bit about it, and just, you know, it was just a challenge for me of learning can I better love my teammates, because like Hannah said, you know, this life is not our own, and what we get to do each day is not our own. And I saw that within our school community, and saw how we really came and we embraced each other. And I saw us pray for each other and encourage each other, and specifically in the athletic department, just because that was my big arena that I was more involved in. But just seeing how teams were motivated to love each other better and find ways to serve each other, and how can we be better stewards of what we're doing, because this life is not our own, and it's a gift, and us being able to play a sport together is a gift, and our teammates are a gift. And so it was yes, I was sad for what had happened, but because I didn't necessarily know her as personally as like Hannah did, I wasn't necessarily part of that volleyball team. For me, she challenged me of, okay, how can I be a better teammate? How can I be a better leader? Because I heard the testimony from Ashton. I remember the chapel that we had for her on campus. I remember Ashton getting up and doing a speech and just going on about her testimony. And it was just like, okay, how can I leave that kind of legacy? Not that I'm looking for people to remember me, but just how can I leave that kind of legacy with my team and with my coaches and my peers, my classmates, whoever it might be. So even though I didn't necessarily know her directly, her testimony definitely did directly affect me and challenge me.
And Bob, I kind of forget the years you were and were not at LBC, the middle part of the decade, but what do you remember from that time in regards to the LBC community?
Well, you know, it's interesting hearing both these ladies' perspectives and just being around it. You know, Zach, you and I were around the student athletes and stuff. We see them on game days, so we don't necessarily experience all that of what it's like to be in the team huddle, in the practices and stuff like that. So it's really great to hear this. I didn't know Alyssa super well. I knew her, but you know, all of a sudden, when somebody passes, you're like, man, I wish I would have talked to her more, or I would have known more of her story, or something like that. Courtney mentioned, you know, the chapel that was held in January, I believe it was, when her family came up and different students were able to share and everything. I was not working at the college during that time period, but I came to that chapel, and what a tremendous experience. You know, Zach, you and I have the opportunity that people know who we are because we become voices of the athletic department. And Alyssa's dad just comes up to me and he goes, yeah, I don't think we've ever talked before, but thanks for always doing what you do. And I'm like, man, this is not about me today. This is really about your daughter and the opportunity to remember her and celebrate her life. So that chapel was a real special time. But then I even think what was more special, and Hannah, you probably can relate to this a little bit more, is was that first women's volleyball game the following season in 2017. It was a home match, and new coach. How do we celebrate her? And you as a team, the women's volleyball team, just did a tremendous job of coming together. It was an extremely emotional night. Even though here we are 10 months later, it was still very raw and very fresh. And how do you get freshmen to understand it? Well, just being there, you gather it and you remember all those feelings of, man, somebody should be with us tonight, and yet God chose to take her home, and we still could celebrate Alyssa that evening. And the other team was real respectful. I don't even remember who we played that night.
Messiah.
But I just remember, and
It was. I remember that game.
yeah, and on top of it, I think they even, they knew what was going to happen, and they participated well, and so. Yeah, in my 14, 15 years with the college, there's only been 2 or 3 students that have passed on in some fashion. Alyssa's was one of those that was just such a tragic death and happened so quickly. And it's so hard for a school to come together because classes weren't in session. And it was one of those things of, wow, what just took place and how do we get people together? And yet God was very good, and students did come together, and lots of great conversations have been had. And Alyssa's memory lives on, even though that's been 4 years ago now, it's still very fresh in all of our minds.
No, I think it's a good reminder. I think all of you mentioned it. It kind of forced you to look inward, despite the fact that we were grieving for her family and her teammates and things like that. Courtney, to your point, how can I be better? I know it affected me, and that I as a dad of 2 boys at that time, you can't help but think of the dad of Mr. Bowen, bearing a child, and that's not our plan. That's not our plan when we have kids. It's not our plan when we go through life. It's completely opposite of what we think the natural order of things is going to be. And my thoughts were with him, especially during that chapel. Again, Bob, like you, I didn't know him very well. I knew him to say hello. I knew Mrs. Bowen to say hello. They were at a ton of the matches, if not all the matches. It wasn't that far for them. And yeah, that chapel that affected me for a while, in a good way for the most part. But it was heavy in a good way, but it was very in the moment. And it was, again, you hate to put a time frame on things, but it was, just before Christmas, and we didn't have that chapel for 5 weeks, 6 weeks until afterwards. And you kind of put it off almost. It doesn't seem real. And then all of a sudden one morning it's really real and really kind of in your face, and you have to deal with it and you have to confront it. And I thought our student athletes and our administration, both in the athletic department and general college leadership, did a really nice job of having that chapel, having open discussions, letting people know that they could come talk whenever they want to. We have a framed picture up of Alyssa in the gym still. I walk by it every day to go to my office. And, I think every once in a while, it's not a standard thing, but I'll stand there and read it once or twice every once in a while. And it's just a good reminder of, again, Hannah, to your point, she was so good as a volleyball player, and she had played basketball the year before, and she had a very illustrious career at her high school, and just a tremendous athlete, and seemingly a tremendous friend to all those who talked about her.
And speaking to her family, just the most beautiful family, and who has really taken so many of us in as their own and really cared for us after Alyssa's passing in a way that was so incredibly special. And I couldn't pick they deserve it the least, if that's possible to say. They deserve something like this to happen the least, but have carried themselves with the most grace. And I admire them so much. And we really wanted to do Alyssa justice. And Bob bringing up that game just brings back so many memories for me, because it was such a hard thing, but we looked forward to it with such angst and anticipation, and wanting to give her the respect and also just the grief at the same time, battling that so hard. And with a new coach who didn't know Alyssa, that was really hard for Coach Jackie, but I know she wanted to show her that respect as well. And even a couple girls from Messiah knowing Alyssa from high school, and I mean learning all of Alyssa's athletic history from back then too. She's just incredible. But it was a very necessary game, but extremely hard, extremely emotional. But we were really happy to be able to do that with Messiah specifically, because they wanted to show her that respect and give her and do her justice as well. So that it was a really special time.
The college also did one other thing really well too, and they do that consistently. And I almost think it's like ripping a Band-Aid off though for the family. Alyssa would have graduated in 2019 had she lived beyond that car accident, that tragic accident. But again, God's timing was not that. But so during graduation ceremonies, and I've seen the school do this a few times now, for a student who has passed, they honor that student at graduation, and they put the chair, they put a black cover over it as a memory and flowers there, and then they actually say her name at graduation and had her parents come up. And for me, I know it was very special, but I to your point, Zach, about being a dad, I can't imagine that as a parent, this is one more thing, and they know it's an honor, but it doesn't make it any easier. But you guys are right. Life is so short, and it's hard to imagine losing someone when they're so young, and it seems like everything should be going other ways. But God has used Alyssa's life to reach a lot of people then too. I know at her funeral, there was people who made decisions to choose the Lord even that day. And what a special memory for her parents that way too. So while there was a lot of mourning that was going on, it truly was a celebration of life though too.
Absolutely. So I really appreciate just taking the time here to talk about Alyssa. I think she was a big part, and not only this year, but as we've just talked in the last 10 minutes, a lot of our lives during that time and even into today. So there's probably no easy transition to the next subject, but we'll try our hardest here. But Courtney, as we go through the year a little bit into January and February, you were on the basketball team for your 3 years here at LBC, and January, February, not a slow start for the basketball team that year, but January, February kind of really pick it up. What made the team kind of click here in the second semester? Was it just kind of meeting everyone? Hickey's brand new that year. Chrissy's in her last year. We had not lost, but Aubrey, Shanice, and Katie were the year before, and it's kind of this brand new thing. Kirsten Webster's a bigger part of the team now. Was it just kind of like it took a lot of weeks to kind of meet one another and, hi, I'm Courtney, and here's where I like the ball? And what was it there that second semester that kind of clicked for the basketball team?
I do remember it being a little bit of a transition for us to get rolling. And I don't know if it's just because there were so many brand new faces, and, that was my first year at LBC, and Vanderhoff had asked me to be one of the leaders on the team as well, which I was grateful for grateful that she asked, but it was also like, okay, this is my first year. Like, I don't really know the program yet, or you or the team. So like Chrissy and I, figuring out each other in that aspect, but also figuring out each other on the court, and she was our point guard and I was one of our main forwards. So, I mean, we were trying to figure out each other. So coming into the second semester, I think it was like, okay, we're good. Let's get this rolling. And I remember Chrissy and I, we fed off of each other. And if I had a bad game, it was really interesting. I remember my mom actually pointing this out, like as far as stats go, she goes like, if you had a bad game, Chrissy usually had a bad game. And if Chrissy usually had a bad game, you had a bad game. And it was just really interesting. It was like, okay, yeah, we really do need each other. Like this is why there's 5 of us on the court right now. Okay. So I think it was more of just like getting over the hump of like, we're all brand new. And we had a lot of talent on the team that year. For there being so many new people and so many new faces, there was a lot of skill coming on. So I think there was even that, figuring out those like, okay, you're a really good shooter, you're a really good ball handler, but she's also a really good ball handler. And so I think Vanderhoff did a really good job with helping us all transition into being a good team and helping us find our gifts and what we were good at and how we could best fit those together. And so I think that was kind of we kind of like reached the top of the roller coaster, and then, second semester came and it was like, go. So
I don't want to put you on the spot here, but I do want to give Chrissy her due, because we talked a lot about Aubrey and Shanice and Katie last couple weeks. But is Chrissy the best point guard you ever played with, Courtney?
yes.
Okay.
Hands down. No,
Good answer. Thank
no
you.
offense to the rest of my point guards
Well, no,
I played with,
and-
but like, yes.
Yeah. Thank you for proving my point. I appreciate the help there. It's a terrible question for someone to ask, but I do want people to understand how easy she made it look for Aubrey the year before you got there, and for you, your first year and her last year. Just, it must be nice to lay up the ball when it's handed to you on a platter and you're already halfway up to the basket.
I do. I remember I don't know why people didn't figure this out. Like, for the number of times we did this in a game, she would drive straight down the middle of the lane. I'd be parked on the block, and she literally just like hand it over. Like, and that was it. And she got most of her assists, and I got most of my points off of that one play. So I don't know how we made it work as often as we did, but I vividly remember that.
No, I just think it's a good point to bring up, and it's not to diminish anyone in any way or anyone you played with, but I do know it was different your last 2 years of you getting the ball. That play didn't exist the last 2 years that you played there. And it's not because anyone wasn't trying. It's just Chrissy made it look really, really easy all the time.
She did.
And again, we're not going to go through your season right now with you guys, Bob, and I'll do that here in a little bit. But when she wasn't in the lineup, you guys were a very different team. And when she left the program after graduating, you guys were a little bit different team. Not necessarily worse, just different. And the points had to come from different spots. And I do think it was a little harder on the offense to score. And I just want to make sure that if this is the official record of the decade of what we're talking about, I want it on the record that she was the best point guard we had in terms of making other people around her have it easy. I think Lauren Helliger was a better scorer as a point guard than she was, but I think Chrissy Pinnell was the best passer we've ever had. And so I just want that on the record for everyone.
Yes.
And Courtney, thank you for saying yes when I asked you that question.
Just reading your mind, Zach.
Thank you. Mind. Perfect. So Bob and I have talked in the last couple of weeks, mostly starting with the end of 13-14, but certainly 14-15, definitely 15-16. The year we're in, and I would go into 17-18. And it has a little bit to do with records on the floor and points on the floor. We're kind of calling these like the golden years a little bit of certainly the decade. And Bob's been around LBC a little bit longer. But I would say that these were some of the best years we ever had in terms of coaches, in terms of student athletes, in terms of wins, in terms of community service, whatever you want to throw out there. I would say these 5 years rank high. What are some of the memories you guys have from these years? And I'm willing to go in most any direction here with you if you'd like.
So can we go beyond this specific year?
18.
Yeah, not 18, 19. No, I'm just kidding. Obviously, there are other good things in other years. But I just think that LBC hits this path where there's a ton of new people. We have a ton of new recruits. Rosters are expanding, full-time coaches, new buildings on campus. It's just all sort of clicking for LBC.
So
Not everyone at once.
So you go.
Back to Courtney. No. I didn't know much about LBC before committing to come play. So the history, I all kind of just learned it as I went. But I could definitely tell a lot of changes were happening and things were growing. I mean, I did walk in my freshman year to the men's basketball team having an undefeated season, but I knew that wasn't very traditional. But I can tell from my freshman year to senior year, even just the level of athleticism and the recruiting and, like you've said, the full-time coaches, different buildings going up. When I came in my freshman year, I had never seen the gym before my freshman preseason, and they had just been putting up the brand new bleachers. So I hadn't even been there before that. So I know a lot of things have changed, especially over the last decade. I'm not even sure if that answered a bit of your question, but
No, it's good. I just think this was, and Bob, maybe you and I can talk about it too, but I want anything that you guys have for just kind of understanding how you two specifically in your own ways were a part of something really, really special for our department and our school over the time that you were there. I want you guys to, I hope that you understand how thankful we were for you two specifically, but also what you brought energy wise to your teams. I have a student worker question here in a second. It was just, it was fun. There was energy, but it was also you two, I feel specifically, and this is why Bob and I wanted to have you on the podcast, just you were so energetic and full of life that people just fed off of you. And I really hope that you guys know that. And, but also, were you guys just having fun, or were you at the same time just learning a lot about yourselves and the school and all your friends and things like that?
I would probably say all of the above if that's an option, because I played basketball in Colorado my freshman year, and it was quite a challenging year and a very discouraging year for me in a lot of aspects, but specifically in the athletic field. So for me coming to LBC, it was very refreshing to come into a smaller school where their focus was developing student athletes who sought to use their gifts to advance the kingdom. And I heard that when I came and talked to Pete Beers. I heard that when I came and talked to Vanderhoff, to Josh Beers. And just that, for me, that was very refreshing, and I was very excited to be a part of that. So I think my first year of basketball, it was just like I was just on a high, where it's just like I get to play basketball again, and like I'm having a great time, and I'm actually enjoying it right now. This is good. And then even 2 years later, when I went and joined the volleyball team, it was just another, I knew Micah Heron from Northland. So there was like a little bit of like, okay, I do know him. I know what he's like. I know what his heart for the game is and the heart for coaching. And so that was exciting for me. And I know you're going to get to the student athlete thing, but because I worked as a student athlete, like I worked as a student worker in the athletic department, and I spent more hours in there than I did anywhere else, I got to see a lot. And so before I played volleyball, I worked the tables. Like every game, I was working the tables. So the weekends, I was working tournaments. I was doing their laundry. I was cleaning their locker room. I was seeing everything about them, and I knew who they were as a team and as a culture. And I craved being a part of that. And I wanted to be a part of that. So even going into volleyball, again, I was just on a high. Like I love the game of volleyball. So I was like, yes, I get to play this again. But I knew the girls, and I had friendships with a lot of them, but I was also excited to be part of that culture. So I think for me, I was just excited, and that excitement just came out and I think even my freshman year kind of challenged me in how to be a better leader and how to be a better teammate. And so even though I didn't necessarily always enjoy that year, I'm grateful for it, because it definitely structured and formed my perspective of what sports are. And that took me into LBC. So that was also driving me as I was a part of teams and led teams and was encouraged by my teammates. So I think for me, it was mostly excitement and just like a high of just being at a new school, being a part of new teams. And
Yeah. I think from like high school, what I was dreaming of to get out of a college experience, especially a college athlete experience, I just look back at my career at LBC and I got everything I could have wished for and more. And I just look back at it with full confidence that I don't even feel like I made the right decision. Like the Lord just led me to LBC and I had no choice but to submit to it. And because of it, I just had the greatest experience, even with all the changes, even with all the tragedy, and just, I mean, I would do it all. I mean, I'd do it all again and again and again, but the team I was given, I could not have asked for a better group of women, young women to be on a team with. I mean, you just can't, you don't pick your family and you don't pick your teammates. So that I got the best little family group of teammates I could have asked for. And then Courtney Goyak comes on my senior year, not even knowing that she played the game of volleyball. And so it was your junior year, well, my senior year, and just gave us, I mean, just a cherry on top of our team. So I just think of the girls I played with who are still my friends to this day. We just met up a weekend ago and had a sleepover, and I love those girls more than life. And to know that it's really true, like those relationships I will have the rest of my life, and those friendships will stay with me, and we've gone through everything together, the highs and the lows. And you know, one of our standards is authenticity, and just to share the highs and the lows, the good and the bad of life, and to do it authentically together. And the coaches, I mean, having 3 coaches, I mean, some girls had a different coach every single year of their experience, and that's not technically ideal for a college athlete, but I look back at it and think, wow, I got so much experience out of it and so many different perspectives, volleyball and in life, all of these different leaders who were all phenomenal figures in my life. I just feel like I got the most bang for my buck, honestly, with all of those coaches. It's not ideal. There's lots of changes, lots of transitions to different coaching styles, but I feel like that was part of like the Lord's purpose for the team I was on and the class I came in with and where we ended up senior year. All of that played into where we ended up and how successful we were from my senior year. I mean, from freshman to senior year. So I could not speak highly. I mean, Courtney, I know, could say the same thing. I could talk all day about my experience.
Yeah, I would I would say amen to everything Hannah Gipe just said. Like LBC was a gift for me, and my closest friends that I have now are all from LBC. And most of them are from sports, and they're my teammates. And so LBC was a gift when it came to relationships and community. I don't have enough good words for LBC.
I think that's the one thing Bob and I have been so excited about in doing this project. Bob and I have heard from lots of different people. We've had lots of different guests on, and we've had lots of interactions discussing the podcast and things like that. But one of the things we've heard over and over again is, oh, I just saw them last weekend, or we have a Zoom call later this week. The sleepover one is new, Hannah. But you know, this has been the best part about this, is that we always talk about in athletics. I'm sure you guys heard it from your coaches and from Pete Beers and probably me and down there, whomever, like, hey, we hope you guys are learning to build relationships and friendships that are going to last. And we feel like doing that through athletics is the best way to do it. And it feels good to be rewarded with that answer being yes, but also that it's so great for everyone, whether it be tragedy or whether it be just 4 years of being together. And, you know, I'm sure there are ups and downs in those relationships and things like that. And that's good for friendships. But it's just amazing to hear everyone using this experience at LBC. And whatever you think of sports at LBC, hopefully it's gotten better as we've gone through the decade. But it brings people together, and it doesn't have to be a normal team. It can be a student worker team. And you guys were 2 of the best student workers we had. You know, Courtney, I joked before we started recording that you used to vacuum my office every Monday morning, and it was great. And you do the trash and you vacuum, and I never took that for granted because, or if I did, I apologize because now I have to do it. So
to make sure you had a good start to your week.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. That was great. Having my trash empty, my floor clean, that was a good start to my week.
I feel like everyone Zach's office to bug him, so it's just fun. And
I love when people are in my office. So no, but how did you guys use that experience? Because it's not like playing basketball. It probably felt like an off night, Courtney, when you got to do the volleyball table, because it was there. It's a different kind of stress. It's not you playing. Or Hannah, you know, you were at a ton of volleyball stuff. You help with lots of other sports too. What was that team like, or how did you use that experience to help you with where you are now?
I got to witness some of the most bang up men's volleyball. I mean, the best perspective to go from my freshman year when they were 1 and what?
26.
1 and 26 to my junior and senior year when, I mean, there's not a more incredible transformation. There really isn't. And that level of volleyball, it was just to be that close. I mean, I know I did some games with Courtney, but to be that close to the action and to just be so incredibly proud of your team and your school and your program for not only where they are and how successful they are, but from where they came from, it just makes it all the more greater. And I don't know, just you don't get that experience often. Back to you, Courtney.
Yes. I think one of my favorite memories of LBC was simply working in the athletic department. Like I did everything from cleaning the athletics staff's offices to helping Sarah Wilcox with like behind the scenes work, to setting up games, to doing laundry, to cleaning locker rooms, to cleaning the vans. I think I did about every possible job that there was within the athletic department, but I absolutely loved it. Like I loved it. And I loved getting to talk to the coaches on Monday morning when I came in and cleaned their offices. I loved catching up with Brittany at 9:30 at night because she's still there waiting for a team to get done, and I'm avoiding having to clean the men's locker room. You know, to be able to sit and serve the men's volleyball team by setting up their stuff for their game day and doing their laundry. And I know like it sounds like it's funny, but I enjoyed doing that for the teams because I felt like I was able to, it was a simple way for me to serve the teams. And yes, I did get paid for it, but I enjoyed it. And
Not a lot.
Not a ton. I did get a raise my second year there.
Yes.
Well, 25 cents.
I didn't authorize that. That must have been Sarah.
Oh, Sarah. Yep. Shout out to Sarah Wilcox. But I loved having that opportunity to serve the coaches and the teams and our athletic trainers in a very simple way, but it also allowed me to stay very involved in the athletic department and get involved outside of my sports. And I mean, men's volleyball is one of the biggest ones that stuck out to me. And it was fun being able to, I remember when they lost the Niagara Championship to Wells, I still vividly remember that last play. And I'm not someone who cries very often. Like I rarely cry, but I cried for them after that because I had gone back to empty the water jugs. And as I was coming out, they were coming out of their locker room. And so I'm standing there holding the door open for them. And guys are coming down and their heads are just hanging. And some of the guys are starting to tear up. You know, I have guys coming up and just like giving me hugs. And I'm just like, what am I supposed to do with this? You know, guys who I don't really interact with a whole lot. And I was like, okay, you come here, buddy. I got you. Come here. So, like, and I come out, I was like, I'm crying for them. But like, that was part of being a part of the athletic department. I enjoyed that aspect and being involved in way more than just my sports that I was involved in.
Courtney, I have a feeling you would have cried a lot for them the year they went 1-26.
I probably would have. Yes.
Tears, yes.
Yeah. You guys did, this wasn't the 2016-17 year, but you both had the opportunity to play for Micah on women's volleyball. And I understand there were some unique experiences in the vans and bus rides of some competitions that often went on.
Yes.
Anything you want to share about that?
Oh, yes.
Take it away, Courtney.
Well, okay. So I knew one of the competitions he introduced was something he introduced, but I knew of a certain tradition that they did on one of their long bus trips. I'd heard about it. I knew about it. And it was Charger Idol, which for our viewers who don't know what that is, basically every girl got to choose a song of their choice. And they would go to the front of the bus, they put on these headphones and they crank the music to the point that they could not hear themselves. And you just sing. And you just from the bottom up, you just let it go. So I was thrilled that I finally got to participate in that. And so my first year, I went hard out to a VeggieTales song. I thought it was fitting. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. And
she was playing it. You was playing it from before the season even started. She was playing it.
I knew what I was singing. And I'm proud to know VeggieTales by word for word.
What song did you pick?
I sang the cheeseburger song. It's one of the silly songs with Larry.
Yes.
I like
it's one of my dad's favorites. So I kind of sang it in honor of him.
Nice.
So it was an honor to be able to participate in that event.
Every father's dream.
He was proud. He was proud. I sent him the video and I remember him texting me back and being like, I was in tears. I had to watch it again.
I don't know that I've seen that video. You might want to share that with the rest of us.
I do have it, actually.
Okay. I'll be interested in seeing that.
Okay.
Hannah, your experiences on the bus rides?
If you would like to know, Bob, the inaugural year of Charger Idol, my junior year, when we're all just figuring out this game, Coach Jackie, who brought wild games for us to play, not just on the bus, but in preseason, we did these wild games. She did team bonding like no other, let me tell you. We bonded over these crazy things she made us do, wacky, wild things, embarrassing things, but we had a great time. It brought us together. So Charger Idol, on our long New York trips, we got plenty of time on this bus. So I chose Bon Jovi, Living on a Prayer, the inaugural year, did pretty well. But Susanna Whiting, I believe, won the first year.
Yes, she did.
I've drawn yes, with her, I think Mariah Carey or something that was almost
Whitney Houston.
Whitney Houston, yes, thank you. But yours truly, my senior year, I ain't as good as I once was, but I'm as good once.
The Queen, she won.
By Toby Keith. It just seemed appropriate,
Yes,
and
it did.
that song. I went out with a bang senior year to Toby Keith.
And I was proud to lose to you, honestly. You're a worthy competitor.
She's a good sport, but she wins biggest entertainer on the bus anyway. Listen, I still have my game time playlist that I play, and we still send in our group Snapchat with the team. We still send memories of Courtney jamming out to who knows what. So it was never a dull bus ride. Nothing was at all.
I know that the men's basketball team from years gone by, they have group chats and everything. I'm glad to hear that women's volleyball has a chat going on as well.
Oh, yes.
And it's like you said, though, you guys have become lifelong friends, and there will be memories and laughter galore for years to come. So, and Courtney, I will say this. Sorry, Zach, for hijacking here a moment. I'm pretty sure after this podcast gets up and posted, you'll be hearing from Sarah Wilcox, because you're the first person to mention her, and she is a faithful.
Oh, yeah. She is a legend.
Yes, she is.
Yes, I'm very grateful for quick little shout out for Sarah Wilcox. She was a huge mentor for me at LBC my first 2 years, before she had to go have a family and have a baby and stuff. Like, it's fine. But she was obviously my boss in the athletic department, but she became a great friend and a great mentor for me. So thank you, Sarah Wilcox. I will forever appreciate you.
And since we gave Courtney the shout out, any shout outs for you there, Ms. Gipe?
Oh goodness, to someone in the athletic department. All y'all behind.
It doesn't have to be athletic department. It
someone
can be
with a
someone with a rock on their finger. Yes, I'd like to give a shout out to my roommate, Ashton Bauslag, and her current fiance, Tommy Croak, LBC Athletics alumni. Shout out LBC bringing people together, ring by ring, MRS degree. Shout out for it all. No, I'm just kidding. These kids are the real deal. They're the real deal. There's no Bible college stereotypes going on. They're just the real deal. The Lord brought them together, and they just happened to meet at LBC. So yeah. But honestly, shout out to y'all too, because y'all do so much behind the scenes. And I know we hear y'all's voices all the time, and y'all are kind of the faces of LBC. But goodness gracious, I would be there late at night sometimes in the gym, and I'd see Zach's light
Zach
on.
would still be there.
And I thought, his poor wife probably hates LBC.
No, just the person with the light on.
It would be late at night. I'd be walking back to the cleaning closet. We'd make eye contact, and it'd be like, it's like 10:30 at night. Neither want to talk. We're both done with the day.
Those articles won't write themselves, and those locker room floors won't clean themselves, Courtney. So we just got the two ships passing in the night. It's fine.
Late night. Yeah.
I will neither confirm nor deny what you just said about Mrs. Freeman and her love or hate of the college. No, she loves the college, and she loves her husband dearly. But yes, Zach Freeman has helped move LBC athletics very much forward, whether he's coaching, and he's coached probably more teams than anybody at the college.
Ugh.
Which I also did not know that before the podcast. So that was very
yeah.
I didn't know that either.
Coaching is a very loose term when Bob says coaching. That's
Oh,
okay.
stop. Don't be so
You know,
modest.
He's currently an assistant golf coach right now, by the way. So
The best coaching
Oh.
job I've had in the 12 years I've been at LBC, let me tell you.
So, and from podcasts to the website stats, there's nobody that does stats better than Zach Freeman. So
We all
we're very
expect
proud of him.
this. Everyone wants to see the scores, the stats, the live stuff. Everyone reads the articles. Like, we just expect them, but nobody sees you up late at night doing all that. So yes.
Just you two, apparently.
And Bob, we all know your prayer. We all have memorized.
We all
it.
have it memorized.
If I ever have to say a prayer at an athletic event, I will give you the copyright, because that is the prayer I'm saying. And if we all weren't saying it as you were speaking it, you are not a true LBC
athlete.
That is hysterical you guys bring that up, because Bob said that prayer at a wedding between two LBC athletes as a joke, and only the people who were in on the joke were on the floor. And the people who weren't in on the joke just stared
So
like,
confused.
who did they get to do their wedding? It was great. It was the best of both worlds. So.
Oh man, yeah, there was quite a few people.
What are you, Hannah? We'll start with you, and then Courtney. What are you guys up to now?
Me first?
Sure.
Okay. I just a couple months ago just moved to the beautiful Roanoke, Virginia, and I am a counselor at a crisis pregnancy center. And I love my job. I love what I'm doing.
You're so good at that. I'm sure you are so good at that.
Thanks, Court. I love Courtney Goyak so much, but listen, we have not caught up, but I still love her like I talk to her every day. Courtney, back to you. What are you doing?
Well, I moved to Greenville, South Carolina at the end of last year, so almost on a year. I moved here with my parents. I work at a large Christian school in the area. I'm kind of a floater in their elementary, and then I'm one of their coaches in the middle school. I'm the middle school volleyball coach, middle school basketball coach. So I'm enjoying that. And then I also work full-time for, Hannah Grace knows this, I work for full-time for this dog adoption agency in the area. It's a nationwide, well-known dog breeding adopting agency.
This is the plug.
That I'm very proud of. So I can give a quick shout out to Crockadoodles. For all your doodle needs, just hit me up. Jenny Mulvey, who I got her doodle, and I'm proud to say it. So I get to coach and I get to look at puppies all day. So I can't complain. I really can't.
Absolutely fantastic. I love it. I love that you guys are having fun still. I love that you guys are doing what you like, and I'm sure that your passion that you exuded at LBC is now taking place at your jobs, and you can get paid for it. So nice. So
good trade-off.
We really appreciate you guys coming on and taking some time to talk about not only this the academic year we're on, of course, but your time at LBC, and I hope to see you around campus very soon.
Thank you for inviting us. It's a true pleasure.
Go Chargers.
I was so pumped when Bob sent us the message, and then I saw it was Hannah Grace as well. I was like, oh, it's just got so much better.
This is the funnest, y'all. Thank you so much for having us.
So good to see all three of you.
Yeah, it's been great having you guys here too. So thanks for doing it. Hannah, if the counseling job doesn't ever work out for you, I think something in communications probably is going to be working for you. You have done, back to you, Courtney. I'm really impressed with the transitions and segues that have gone on with you tonight. So thank you. Well done.
Thank you all. Good night.
Hey, we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.
Love you, Courtney. Bye.
Love you, Hannah Grace.
Bob, it was everything we thought it was going to be.
And probably even more.
We should have just sent them off into a separate room of Zoom so they can just keep going on. So,
yep.
Fantastic. Couldn't appreciate them more. Student workers, they're some of the student workers that end up becoming friends, and just kind of, again, we have student workers who we get to know, and they kind of get to know us and our ticks and our the fact that Courtney brought it up. She would walk by and I'd have music on that I'm sure people in the neighborhood could hear, but it was the only thing keeping me awake. So, and she would just walk by and Yep. It's like two old janitors, like Larry. Yep. Joe. Like it was just, but we each had our job to do, and we loved it. So it's funny that she brought that up. And yeah, they are the same as they were when they were there 5 years ago, and it's great. It's the best part. So
yeah, that's for sure.
So we'll get on to 2016-17 here quickly. Again, I would say after a couple of straight years of the men's team sort of dominating, I would say this was more of a women's team year a little bit, just in terms of, again, records or on the court or on the field type things. But again, a good year for a lot of people. And as we'll get to here throughout the podcast, at the beginning of our individual sport dominance here a bit this year as well. The men's soccer team was 10-11, 2016. They're 8-5 in the conference. Lost to Cuca in the Niagara quarterfinals, then lost to Grace College there, or in Indiana, in the NCCA Division I playoffs. They got killed out there. The highlight, I suppose, of the year, and we're going to talk about this in the best game. They nearly beat 15th ranked Elizabethtown in the middle of October. They lost in double overtime that day. Marco Patz led the team with 6 goals. Edward Bills and Brandon Dooley had 5 goals apiece. This is the first year for Caleb Nelson and Dan Babersdorf. They each had 4 goals. Van Sutphen was the goalie. He's actually a pretty good goalkeeper that year, 9-9 overall, 6 shutouts, 1.61 goals against average. This is sort of the middle year between the good teams of 14-15 and then the really good teams of 17-18-19, Bob.
Yeah, for sure. And like when you say this is Caleb Nelson's first year and everything, Caleb Nelson really developed over the next couple of years. He worked really, really hard to become the soccer player that he did. I mean, there were other great guys on the team, and you mentioned it earlier too. We were fortunate to have some Northland guys join the team this year too. That they were key contributors as well. So
Absolutely,
probably more defenders than you're going to see on the stat sheet, but. Picking up those guys from Northland were real helpful.
Absolutely. Women's soccer, a little bit of a return to dominance here a little bit in a different way than the teams we talked about in the 2010, 11, and 12 podcasts. They were 16-7, 12-1 in the NEAC. This is the second year for Leah Sipe. They beat Cazenovia 5-0 in the NEAC quarterfinals, and then had a pretty big win against SUNY Poly in the NEAC semifinals. We were dealing with some injuries and kind of banged up there at the end of the year, and I think that SUNY Poly thought they were going to beat us that day. And when they had a really good forward that year as well, he would score a lot of goals, and we kind of shut her down. And then lost to Berks in double overtime, the NEAC final. We'll talk about that game here in a little bit too. It was a great game. I know I was there, Bob. I assume you were there up there for that as well. A great game between two really good teams. I'd have to go back and look, but I'm pretty sure Berks, if they didn't win a game that year in the tournament, they played really well in the first round of the NCAA tournament. So that could have been a year that we could have gone on to do some things, perhaps, if we'd have won that game. We did beat Cincinnati Christian 3-2 in the NCCA Division I playoffs. That was the first Division I win for the women's soccer team. We talked about basketball in last week's podcast, and then we'll talk about them again this year in that. But they did lose then to Indiana Wesleyan in the NCCA Division I Midwest Region final. Outscored opponents 64-24 that year, had a 6-game win streak, and then won 9 of 10 at the end of the year. Reagan Horst was great this year, 12 goals, 10 assists, 6 game-winning goals. That's the second most in program history. Alyssa Wessner had 12 goals. She had 5 game-winning goals. Barb Foster, this is her only year in a Lancaster Bible uniform. She then transferred to Messiah, but she had 6 goals, 5 assists. Abby Brady, 7 goals. Hannah Bernstein, 5 goals, 5 assists. Caitlin Schuing, terrific in goal, 11 shutouts, 0.91 goals against average. She really improved over the course of her time at LBC as well. Really became a leader and a backstop there for the Chargers on the defensive end that year. Just going through some of those names, Bob, I think that I knew the record. I knew that we were good that year, but this is Hannah Bernstein's only year too. I mentioned Barb Foster's only year. Abby Brady had an injury at the end of this year that kind of rendered her playing career over for the most part. You just wonder if the team could have been together longer, if there would have been more success there.
Oh, for sure. I mean, when you start adding up those score totals, these girls knew how to score and were doing it quite well. Abby Brady's accident was just, that's a hard one to deal with and everything. But had this team stuck together, who knows if Berks would still be the reigning NEAC champs the way they are and everything. But Berks is definitely late in this decade. They are the team to beat, and was the nemesis of women's soccer.
Absolutely. Moving on to women's volleyball, 15-20 overall, 8-5 the NEAC. Again, this was Lauren Bewley's final year as the head coach of the team. They lost 3-0 to Morrisville in the NEAC quarterfinals. Alyssa Bowen, we mentioned, she had 316 kills, 77 blocks. Ashton Bauslog, 215 kills, 269 digs. Miranda Kemmer, 429 digs. Hannah Gipe, who we just had on, 161 kills, 232 digs, 41 blocks. There, and Emily also 181 kills, 64 blocks as well. So, again, you don't want to say typical team, but a team that probably wishes they could have a couple matches back, but also a team that didn't quit throughout matches. We're going to get to one of their matches here when we talk about best game, but a team that fought, but maybe was just a couple players short in a few matches. This is still a pretty good conference for women's volleyball as we're talking here, but I think there are a few games here in the schedule that they would have liked to have had back in this particular year.
Yeah, it's so interesting to look at that. Women's volleyball always is just right there. They're making playoffs almost every year, and I think every year of the decade they did make playoffs and stuff. But it's how do you get to that next level and everything? So.
And if you stick with us for a couple of weeks, as Hannah mentioned, we'll get to the playoffs where they did crack through there and make the NEAC final. So men's cross country, 7th out of 12 in the NEAC. We actually hosted the cross country championships for the NEAC. This is our first time ever hosting. Tanner Kroeb, 14th of the NEAC championships. He was 6th at the Karen Invitational earlier in the year. And Clay Brenner, 34th of the NEAC championships. We're 1 week away from talking some real big cross country stuff, but this is the beginning this is the start here again of some individual performances that are really good. The women got 5th out of 12 teams in the NEAC at the NEAC championships. They won the Charger Invitational out of 9 teams. I as I looked that up, I remember that being a pretty good win against some pretty good cross country teams that year, the Charger Invitational that we won. Liz Davis was 10th at the NEAC, 2nd at the Charger Invitational. She had 4 top 5 finishes that year. Hannah Zahal, 2 top 10 finishes that year as well. So a good year for women's cross country. And again, we got to host the NEAC championships that year. I remember that being a pretty fun experience.
It was. Well, it's the first time we hosted it, and we were learning as we went. I mean, we've done some of the homecoming Charger Invitationals and everything, but now this is a really big deal, when you're bringing in the entire conference to your school, and there's a lot of runners there. So that's been fun to do, and we definitely learned a lot from it that year. So like you said, cross country is really starting to come around here, particularly with the men moving forward. But the women that year, some great finishers there for sure.
Absolutely. Moving along to the winter here quickly, the men's basketball team, we've been pretty had the spotlight on them the past couple of weeks. They were 14-14 this year, 12-8 in the NEAC, but made sort of a surprise run to the NEAC final. I don't want to say got lucky, but had fortunate matchups that they matched up well with in the playoffs. They defeated Bryn Athyn 78-69 in the NEAC quarterfinals. That was one of Bryn Athyn's better teams that year. We had close games with them in each of the 3 times. We had to beat them 3 times that year, twice in the regular season. I remember going into that quarterfinal game. That's something you and I, Bob, had talked about, being a little nervous. It's hard to beat a team 3 times.
Yeah.
We were able to pull that game out. Then we beat Cazenovia in the NEAC semifinals. This was down at Gallaudet. So we had to play Kaz, and then Morrisville State had to play Gallaudet, the host, and Morrisville State won. And so then we won and played Morrisville State in the NEAC final in front of about 50 people down at Gallaudet. I was not there. I followed the game along. Then we lost to Morrisville State by 7 in a game where, if I recall watching the stats and watching the broadcast, we were in till about a minute and a half to go and couldn't get a bucket there at the end. And it was one of those things as the game's going on, you're kind of thinking, are we really going to do this? Like, is this going to happen again? We're going to win the NEAC again? Like, I don't mean we're going to go play Amherst or something in the first round and lose by 50, but that was not a good men's basketball year. Actually, well, I shouldn't say that. Gallaudet was supposed to win the NEAC that year.
Yes,
They had
were.
the best players, they had the best team, and Morrisville State just beat them in the NEAC semifinals. And Morrisville State went to the tournament. I can't imagine that they did very well that year. I have to look that up, but I know they didn't make a deep run or anything like that. But we started 2-7 and finished 14-14. A couple of bad early losses. I did look this up, and it's going to be in the article that goes with this, but we had more NEAC losses in December than we did the 2 previous years combined.
Wow.
We lost to Wilson and I believe Penn State Berks. I remember and they were at home. We were at home for both those games. I remember looking down, I think at you or someone at the table when we lost to Wilson, kind of like, this is going to be the longest season, especially coming off of last year. There were, we'll just let this out of the bag a while. There were way out of proportion expectations for the 2016-17 men's basketball team.
Oh, there were, yes.
Because of the 15-16 team.
Yep.
This is also the year of the transfer. We had a lot of new players come to the program who had played in other places. They had seen the success we had had the year before and were drawn to the program. That's great. That comes with being successful. It was not a good mix. At the start, I would say it got a little bit better as the year went on. You can't get to the conference final without some gelling.
Sure.
But it was a hard year. For everyone.
Yep.
Herbie Brown was the best player, 15.9 points a game. Brett Catadella, this is his first and only year, just about 13 points a game. Just a great player inside, really got better as the season went on. This is Q's first year. Jason Kunzelman and Austin Brown are on the team as well. This is the year we started the year at F&M. I remember we went, my boys were young, so we actually left at halftime and kind of followed along. You were texting me and in the car, like, Zach, they're winning. They're going to win. Like, they're winning again. I can't believe this is happening. Went to overtime and we ended up losing by 3, but that did not help the expectations for the season because, oh, you can play with F&M again. You're going to be so great. No.
Yeah. I was at the semifinal game with Cazenovia, and I think I was heading somewhere that Sunday when they were playing Morrisville, but I was following it on my phone. Oh my goodness. You're just like, can they really do this and stuff? Because it was a good team, but like you said, they just hadn't gelled the way the team was gelled together the previous year. Good players, great opportunities, and they made the most of their opportunities as well. To go 14-14 for the year, it ended up being way better. Like the 14-14 doesn't sound as good as how the year probably ended for them.
Absolutely. I think if it's a 40 or 50 game schedule where we finish, 32-18, like the team was getting better as the year went on. It just, it took so long. And again, it's not that the team was bad. Like you said, the team was pretty good. It just took a really long time for everyone to figure out their role. It was so different than the year before. Things that had come easy the year before for Filzen were not easy this year. He managed personalities his first year so spectacularly that all of a sudden there's freshmen and transfers and guys he doesn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just hard for them. It was hard for him. And by the end of the year, it was working out. But those first couple of weeks, it had the makings of a long year that we hadn't seen in a while. And again, it was probably a lot of hype and a lot of our own faults for thinking that, well, this will just be the same team as last year. They have guys that looked the same, but it wasn't the same. So.
Yep, for sure.
Women's basketball team was 20-9 this year, 17-3 in the NEAC. Defeated Penn State Abington in double overtime in the NEAC quarterfinals. We're going to talk about that game here in a minute. Then lost to Morrisville State in the NEAC semifinals. They did defeat Oakland City in the NCCA Division I Midwest quarterfinals, then lost to Ohio Christian in the semifinals. They won 13 of 14 games from early January to middle of February. Courtney Goyak, who we just had on the podcast, 18 points, 21 rebounds per game. That led NCAA Division III, the rebounding mark. Katelyn Hickey had 17.6 points per game. She was the NEAC Rookie of the Year. And I brought up Chrissy Pinnell earlier. She had 11, almost 12 points a game and 8 assists per contest. She got hurt at the end of the year. Kind of a fluky play at the end of the game at Wilson. It was one of those times where we just didn't have a ton of depth, so she needed to be in the game towards the end of the game and landed on her ankle wrong and just was not the same the rest of the year. It was sort of a offensive decoy in a few games just to kind of hide the fact that maybe she wasn't as hurt, but she was pretty hurt. And
Yeah.
yeah, it didn't click. I guess if there's something good that comes out of that injury, it's Katelyn Hickey's emergence as a really, really good player who could handle the ball down the stretch. Kirsten Webster could handle the ball down the stretch. They're both going to have really good years the next year. So, you know, a little something good coming out of that a little bit. But I think we probably do a little bit better against Morrisville if Chrissy's healthy there in the NEAC semifinals.
Oh, definitely. There's no doubt about that. I mean, Chrissy was such a key player. And as you talked about earlier, just a point guard that could see the entire floor and knew where her players were at the right times. Women's basketball is just one of those anomalies of our school. I don't think we probably give them enough credit. And part of it is because sometimes our teams were just small, but we would always have 5, 6, 7 players that were just pretty good, and always we were right in the mix every year with women's basketball, and would love to have seen them probably go further than what they would ever do. I mean, I know they were our first team ever to make a Division III tournament, but have not made it back since then. Actually, I'm sorry, women's soccer made the Division III tournament first, but women's basketball was right after them. And yeah, it's going to be fun to see how women's basketball continues to progress. So
absolutely, I think that we think of them because they've had so many opportunities to get to the next level, and just for one reason or another, just haven't been able to get back over that hump after that initial 2013 or 2012-13 year.
Yep.
The men's volleyball team wrapping up the winter here. We made it, Bob. We finally made it. Men's volleyball. Here we are. Everyone enjoy the rest of the podcast. This is men's volleyball time, baby. They're 25-9 this year, 12-4 in the NEAC. They did lose to Wells 3-2 in the NEAC semifinals. They had a 7-match win streak in late January and had gotten to their 2016 win total by February 3rd. 8 straight wins in late February, 8 of 9 in mid to late March. This is the year where the rivalry with Penn State Altoona becomes very fun and apparent. I think Altoona wins it this year for sure, and then next year we'll park there for a while. I may need to get the edit button out for next week, so we'll see if we're going to tell our story or not. Casey Gentry is unbelievable this year. 325 kills, 238 digs, 64 blocks, 39 aces. This is probably his best statistical year. He's very important on next year's team in a leadership role as well as an on the floor role.
Oh yeah.
This is his best offensive year. Daniel Kreider, 253 kills, 84 blocks. Derek Bigley, who we're going to have on the podcast next week, 223 kills. Cole Horst, this is his first year, 212 kills, 54 blocks. Caleb Ansel, this is his first season, 962 assists, 64 blocks. And Richard Solano led the team with 325 digs. This was a lot of fun because it was so unexpected. And then next year, they're going to add a few more pieces, and you're going to see the full power of the men's volleyball program come to light, and it's still there. And it's this is the work of Jade Brubaker. This is the slow, this is the patience, this is the okay, but this is the reward, and there's still so much more to go. But this was a lot of fun to watch this team play and feel good about where the program was going.
You know, you start reading some of those names. Solano was a one and done player. Daniel Kreider. The interesting thing about Daniel is he is a football player by background, and Lancaster Bible College does not have a football team. I know that's breaking news, but
All right.
I know, but comes in and becomes a pretty good middle for LBC, and he becomes a key player these next few years as well. These guys, you're right. We're at the point that the slow, methodical building process of Jade Brubaker, I don't know that we all saw it, but we all know Jade is a great coach. I mean, he coached down at PBU Cairn and went out into the Midwest for a little bit. And we could not be more thrilled that when he came to be a part of Lancaster Bible College. And now we're starting to see, oh yeah, this is what men's volleyball really can be. And they're a powerhouse. So it's pretty
Absolutely.
great.
It's not going to be the only time he takes a former football player and makes him into one of the
No,
best
that's
hitters
right.
around.
That's
So
right.
it's kind of a specialty, if you can call that a specialty. To the spring, baseball was 19-12-1. They were 8-7-1 in the NEAC. They missed the NEAC playoffs by a game. The tie that we have is with Cazenovia. We played game 1-1, and then it started to rain, and there was lightning in the area, and anyway,
There was lightning in the area.
so they wouldn't let us make the game up because of the scheduling, and we ended up missing the NEAC playoffs. And I don't think anyone on this team wants to talk about that. So that's about that. The team was 5-2 on spring break. That was the best mark we'd had at the time. Josh Mayer hit 390 with 46 hits. Will Welsh, 44 hits, 11 home runs. Brian Niedergall hit 365. Justin Taylor, 364, 44 hits, 39 runs batted in. Jensen King was 14 of 14 in stolen base attempts. He had 39 hits and 39 runs scored. He was very good for the Chargers that year. Tyler Greenlee led the team with a 3.20 ERA and 19 2/3 innings pitched. Nate Burns was 6-3 that year, 4 complete games, 3.30 ERA, and Zach Leonard 4-2 that year, 75 strikeouts, 18 walks. Leonard, Jesse Carver, and Gabe Yoder combined on a no-hitter against Valley Forge on March 25th. Pretty cool there that they could combine on a no-hitter that day. Just a pretty good team, Bob, that could hit and could pitch. Some suspect defense at times, but again, just more of the baseball curse of just losing the wrong game.
Yeah, that's right. You look at the stats and they really should have been in playoffs, but one loss too many, and it is what it is. So
absolutely. The softball team was 11-27 that year, 5-15 in the NEAC. Swept a couple doubleheaders from Guydet, St. Elizabeth, and Trinity. Sam Denson hit 378 with 45 hits. Julia Diorigo hit 365 with 46 hits. Zoe Sen hit 343, 37 hits, 29 runs, and Kelsey Collins was 4-7, had 59 strikeouts and just 8 walks for the softball program that year. Women's lacrosse, we talked about them a little bit last week when we had Sherry Horst on one of the podcasts. All the close games they won in 2016, they did not win in 2017. They went 6-10 overall, 3-6 in the NEAC. They lost their last 3 games, including a 15-14 loss to SUNY Poly. They were 2-3 in 1-goal games. If you're unfamiliar with women's lacrosse, you may not play 5 1-goal games in a 10-year span, and they played 5 in 1 year. And then there was 10 games that were decided by 5 goals or less. So this is a 6-10 team that could have been 10-6. This is a 6-10 team that could have been 4-12, or there's a whole range of different. If you played this season 20 times, there's a lot of different records this team could have had.
Yeah, so many what ifs. Had it gone one way or another, who knows what could have happened, but what did happen is what happened. So
absolutely. Alyssa Westner, 91 goals, 98 points. Those are both program records. Miranda Kemmer had 40 goals and 55 points. Hannah Thompson, 27 goals. Katie Stover had 16 goals and 8 assists. And Naomi Otis had 12 goals and 11 assists. So, again, a team that could score. I think this is one of the teams that made Sherry want to shore up the defense in the years to come. They gave up a lot of goals. But, again, just a couple games go a different way, and we're talking about another trip to the playoffs and probably talking about this team in a different way for sure.
Yeah.
Women's tennis went 6-6 this year, 4-2 in the NEAC. They lost to Berks in the NEAC semifinals, but Greta Strunk, freshman this year, she's the NEAC champion, Flight 1 singles champion. So the best player theoretically in the NEAC this year. She's the NEAC player of the year. She's going to win again next year. Spoiler. This is a surprise. Again, we still do not play tennis on campus, so you have to make it a point to go watch them play. And I think I went watched one or two times, but actually Coach Katelyn Vanderhoff for the tennis team this year in 2016-17. But a good team, and Greta starts a run here of some pretty good women's tennis players.
And who was the assistant coach? You better get that name too.
I don't know.
Didn't Dylan assist her?
Oh, that's right. Good job.
Yeah.
Good job.
Sarah Dillon and Caitlin Vanderhoff led tennis. So
I think we've all kind of put that out of our memories a little bit. So
yeah, the fact that Greta comes in as a freshman and wins the Flight One, it's pretty significant. You just don't win the top seed of tennis. Like, if you're unfamiliar with college tennis, there are 6 players, and they're pretty much, coaches are putting your best players in your Flight 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5, and 6. And Greta goes out and she becomes the NIAC champion. And congratulations. I mean, that I think we were all surprised by that. I mean, I guess we knew going into playoff weekend that was a legit opportunity and a chance, but to see it happen, and then to see it happen the next year again, it's pretty cool.
Absolutely. It was a great job, and kind of new as the season went on, but definitely a surprise throughout the year. Men's tennis was 3-7, 2-2 in the NIAC. Jason Steiner was second in Flight 2 at the NIAC Championships, and Evan Holbrook was second at Flight 4 that year for the men's tennis team. Homecoming that year was September 24th, 2016. The men's team lost 2-1 in overtime to SUNY Cobleskill. That was a bad loss. Cobleskill had gotten a red card with about 2 minutes to go in regulation, and we couldn't score in the final minutes of regulation, and then couldn't score in overtime. They actually took the ball down the field and scored. I remember there was some frustration, shall we say, at that result. The women's team beat SUNY Cobleskill 4-0. 4 different goal scorers, and we outshot Cobleskill 53-0 that day. So a real exciting one there on homecoming for the women.
Well, for the alums, they appreciate the wins.
That's true. That's very true. We also hosted the LBC Homecoming Invitational that week as well. 6 nominees, or 6 games here in the best game category. Hannah kind of brought the one volleyball matchup. We defeated Lycoming 3-2, trailed 2-1, won the 4th set 30-28, and then the 5th set 15-12. Men's soccer losing. We don't have too many losses on the best game list, but this was probably the best game of the men's soccer season. They lost 3-2 in double overtime to 15th ranked Elizabethtown. We trailed 2-0 and scored 2 goals in the middle of the second half. Pretty close to one another, maybe 2 goals in a minute and a half or so. Mm-hmm. And then we're looking to kind of tie, and E-Town scored on a pretty weird goal. It kind of went off of a head, and then they weren't sure who it went off of in the box. Did someone hit it with a shoulder or hand? And they allowed it with 3:16 to play. And then we lost to Elizabethtown. Women's soccer, 3-1 win over SUNY Poly in the NIAC semifinals. Again, that was a pretty good Poly team, and they actually led 1-0 for about the first 60 minutes or so. We tied the game there in the middle of the second half, and then scored with 4 minutes to play, and then again a minute later to take a 3-1 lead and win that game, and then went and lost in the NIAC final. Valentine's Day, the men's basketball team beat Bryn Athens 74-73. We trailed at half and then trailed by 3 with 40 seconds to play. But Herbie and Brett scored back-to-back buckets, for the Chargers, and we held them off for a 74-73 win. A couple of days later, men's volleyball defeated Medaille 3-2. We trailed 2-0 and then came back and won the last 3 sets, 27 kills and 9 errors over the final 3 sets. This was during a NIAC weekend. And Bob, I think if I have this right, I'm pretty sure this is one of the years that we got them to do 2 courts at once. And I'm pretty sure that we were playing a match on the left court, and we were losing 2-0 to Medaille, and we came back and beat them. And I don't think many people saw it. And it was just one of those matches where it kind of came out of nowhere. Medaille kind of beat us around the first couple sets, and all of a sudden we won the third and kind of breezed in the 4th and 5th. So a good match that probably not a lot of people saw.
Right.
And then the last game is the women's basketball NIAC quarterfinals. We won 73-70 in double overtime. We were winning, kind of had a pretty large lead at one point during regulation, and Abington came back and tied the game. and we were winning in the first overtime, and Abington tied the game on a 3-pointer late in the first overtime. It was one of those games where I don't know that I ever thought Abington was going to win, but I wondered how long they were going to make us work for it.
Yeah.
But they did have some good players, some players that they're going to have later on, and when they're going to upset us in later years here. But freshman Katelyn Hickey, 3-pointer with 8 seconds to go in double overtime. I can still see that shot going off of her hands and into the back of the net, and or through the net, I should say. But a good game there, and then sends us to the next semifinals.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, all these games are just tight games. You have 2 overtime games going on here, 2 5-set volleyball matches. These are intense games this year, and it's not like everything came just real simple to LBC athletics in 2016 and 17. A lot of these matches are, you got to work for them and do them well. So
Absolutely. And as we go to the next category, and we can talk a little bit about this throughout the rest of the podcast here, the biggest advancement for LBC, you kind of just mentioned it, Bob, she's kind of having to work
yeah,
for a lot of things. Everything that came easy in 15-16 or 14-15 did not come easy in 16-17. And a lot of work went into a lot of things, and finding ways to win is one of the things I have as the biggest advancement. Development of programs. You're starting to see the fruits of full-time coaches in women's soccer, in men's volleyball, things like that, where there are significant recruits starting to come through the program. There are big non-conference wins. There are things like that. And then individual sports kind of on the up and coming here with cross country and tennis. These are some of our biggest stories of 2017, 18, and 19, and they kind of get their start here in 2016, 17. And I think even as we go back and talk about the passing of Alyssa Bowen, nothing was easy in 2016, 17. On the court, off the court, emotionally, spiritually, physically. It made 15-16 seem so easy.
yes.
And it wasn't easy in that year either,
No.
but in comparison, it was a walk in the park.
Yeah, we did. We had a lot to learn from the previous year, and these are some real telling signs. And this is when LBC really probably digs deep, and coaches are having to really encourage their teams and coach really well to figure out how to get those wins. I love it when coaches are able to put the right players in at the right spot at the right time to get the things done that needs to happen. And that's just the fun, that makes those 5-set volleyball matches really worth it. There's times when, and nobody likes to lose, but sometimes it's just inevitable that you're not going to get that win and everything. And it's great when you can dig deeper and go harder and pull out the W, whether it's an overtime win, a 5-set match, the extra inning baseball game, whatever the case may be. A lot of coulda, shoulda, wouldas this year, but still a lot to be proud of.
Absolutely. It was a very trying year, but you learned a lot. You were forced to learn a lot throughout this year. Some of the better memories of the year, men's volleyball becoming fun to watch and turning the corner. And again, Hannah brought it up, but they were 1-26 2 years before this, and 7-23 the year before this. You're not supposed to go from 7-23 to 25-9.
Yeah.
And they did, and kind of got LBC to come along with them, and it's going to be even better next year. So the surprising run of the men's basketball team, like we talked about a little bit earlier, the women's basketball game with Abington, we talked about here just a minute ago. These are games where you kind of think as you're going along, like, hey, something's happening here tonight. And it's just one of these things you're going to remember for a while. And it helped that Katelyn Hickey became one of the best players we ever had.
Mm-hmm.
But this is kind of like her coming out party. I mean, she was great all season long, so you don't want to diminish the first 25 games, but this is really like her, hey, we need a basket. Okay, give me the ball. There's not too many freshmen that say, okay, give me the ball. And she was one of those players that did that freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year. So, and then like we talked about with Courtney and Hannah, just the overall college coming together after Alyssa's passing. And the way that everyone spoke to one another and conversations that were had and that chapel. I mean, I don't think I'll ever have a time that I don't remember that chapel and how difficult that was. Um, but how nice it was and to hear everyone talk. Hannah brought it up and Courtney did too. Just man, I wish I would have had one more conversation with her. Like, man, all this stuff that she did and all the things that she did for others, and you just wish you would have known some more. And to have that taken from you is really hard.
It's easy to remember in the moment. It's harder to live that out daily.
Mhm.
And I think I hope that as people might listen to this right now, and I'm probably speaking to myself, make sure you have the right conversation. Don't let it go by without talking to the people that you love the most and making sure that they also hear that you love them and you care for them and you just want to do life with them. I mean, I think that's what the girls really talked about. Alyssa was just an amazing young lady that, um, yep, God chose to take her home much sooner than any of us would have ever expected. So
Yeah,
it's taught us a lot, and we have a lot to still learn from it.
absolutely. That's very well said. Who won the year? Female nominees, I guess. Reagan Horst, two-sport athlete. Miranda Kemmer, two-sport athlete. Alyssa Wessner, two-sport athlete. Courtney Goyak, who we had on here a little bit, and Greta Strunk. The male, Herbie Brown, Casey Gentry, Will Welsh, Nate Burns. Just a good year for all of them, and some of them are ending their careers this year. Some of them just getting started, and yeah, it was a fun group. I think some names maybe that you forget when you think about best players of the decade, but players like Miranda Kemmer and Alyssa Wessner and Herbie Brown, like they go on those lists,
Oh,
and
for sure.
and Miranda probably towards the top of two sports, and Alyssa just her overall scoring ability in both soccer and lacrosse. I mean, geez, there's just it's just one of those years where you may not have focused necessarily on the individual on some of these teams, but they're really good players.
And they are players that you're going to remember long past this year too.
Sure. One thing we would go back and change, that women's soccer NEAC final 0-0, cold day, early November. And we just played them tough and played them really well and got to a second overtime. I'm pretty sure they scored with under a minute to go
Yeah.
or really close in double overtime. And it was a weird ball that kind of went in and all of a sudden it got to a girl's foot and she just kind of put it up and over Katelyn. And Katelyn, I don't know if she didn't see it in time, but ball just went into the back of the net and you're mentally preparing to watch PKs. And all of a sudden there's a team on the field celebrating and there's still time on the clock. And it was just one of those things where it was over very quickly.
Soccer is one of those sports that fluke play can just change the course of the game completely. And you can outshoot a team in soccer. It's the ball in the net that counts, and whether it was the greatest goal or the goal that, like you have just talked about here, where it just kind of happens. In the end, it's how many balls are in the goal, and that's what can be so great about soccer, and what can be so frustrating about soccer. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's the other one I had, if I go back and change it, is the weather again in the spring. I sound like a broken record here every time I want to go change the weather in the spring. I ought to just move. But the weather is just terrible here some springs, and this is another one of them. So just kind of some of my final notes is just this year makes you appreciate what we're going to talk about next year, or excuse me, next week with the following year, with men's basketball, men's volleyball, men's soccer, individual sports. The hard work of 16-17 is going to pay off in a big way in 17-18.
yeah.
And again, we have the benefit of being able to look back on it like that. But this is the hard lessons learned in 16-17 don't go unused. And we're going to see that next week when we talk about 17-18. The other thing too, I wanted to say, and I didn't have this on your notes, Bob, I just added it here a little bit ago, is this is a year where we really start to make some advancements in the communications for LBC.
Oh my goodness.
I guess my department a little bit, but not really my department. And I just want to send thanks to Pete Stover. I probably should have mentioned his name several podcasts ago. I should probably mention his name every podcast. Um, but his ability to help us with equipment, help us with technical things, sound things, video things, phone calls at all kinds of hours, and he answered every one of them.
Yep.
And was so nice to our student workers, and um, didn't get paid. I feel
Not
terrible.
enough, that's for sure.
Not enough, or at all,
Yeah.
frankly, some years probably. And I feel just terrible about that, looking back on it. But the advancement that we took in these years, especially the next year in 17-18, is solely based on him. And him having an idea, me saying yes and trying to make it work, and him letting me starting to do the broadcast on the game, and next year sort of the birth of You Betcha. And he was the driving force behind all that. He's the horse with no name is his idea. And I just am so thankful he's still a friend. I'm so thankful that if I called him right now at 10 o'clock at night, he'd probably answer and say, "What's up? How can I help?" And there's people like that don't come along very often. And he was so helpful to you, to me, to our student workers, and anybody who watches LBC on a live stream. He's not really with us anymore, but something that we're doing is based upon something he told us to do. So you can thank him for that. So
Absolutely. The fact that, the I don't know if was it this year or was it the year before that he really got live stream going for
the
us?
year before, 15,
the,
16.
the year before, and he was doing it from his home in Virginia. He was doing production
Mm-hmm.
on that end without ever really being up here in Lancaster.
Mm-hmm.
Always blew me away. I'm like, Zach, how is this working? He's like, I don't know. It's all Pete, and he's making it work.
People would email me and say, "So how are you doing your live stream?" Like, it's P Stover at, I don't even know what his email was, but
yeah,
not me, man. Sorry. Like, you're barking up the wrong tree. I put the headset on and started talking. And
yeah.
this is the year that he actually moved some things up to Lancaster, and we had a little, he built like a little
production studio,
one-room shack studio, and
yeah,
ended up being Nick Monroe's office for a little while too. And then we moved some things into the other media room that we don't really have anymore, but had. But it was so awesome to see how well we could do something, and it coincided with some really good teams that helped as well.
That helped. It also helps because like what we are providing, there are NEAC schools that just don't even have commentary of play-by-play for some of their games. But the fact that parents like a Courtney whose mom and dad lives in Wisconsin at that time, and Hannah's parents who are in Florida, they're getting to see their kids play the sports that they've sent them to. Obviously they'd like to be there in person, but when you're a Division III school, moms and dads just can't always come to every match and every game. And the live stream has become such a key component to what we do. And obviously live streaming is going to become even more important, especially as we talk about what pandemics do to things, and can fans be there and stuff like that. A lot of that is so much to be determined still, but we do know that we'll be able to get games live streamed out, so that's pretty cool. And as you have said, Pete Stover, man, he has done so much, and his involvement is Katie Stover.
Mm-hmm.
He just has that background and wanted to help be able to see his daughter play basketball and lacrosse and everything like that. So yeah, for sure.
It was always fun when he would say, okay, because he would do video and video editing for a group that he worked with, and they would go to Africa occasionally. And he would say, okay, so these 2 home games, I'm going to be in South Africa, but if you needed me really bad, I'm like, I'm good, man.
Yeah.
You go enjoy South Africa. It was just great. So he had great conversations. Again, I can't, he was as helpful as he was to me. He was so nice to the student workers and so helpful. and they would call him, and this is down. Okay, put me on FaceTime. Let me look at it. And he would talk them through it. And they learned so much, that hands-on training that Tyler got, and JJ and Jesse and all those guys. And he had nicknames for them all, and it was great. And Mitch, like it was just so great, and it was so fun to be around them. So I do want to say something here real quick in a podcast about that. So
Yep, for sure.
Great. Well, we're looking forward to next week. Big week, big year for a lot of sports, and we're gonna have Derek Bigley on, and we're gonna talk to Derek about his ride through men's volleyball in his 4 years. I was telling someone it was the best of times. It was the worst of times.
That's the truth.
That's the novel that Derek could have written about his volleyball career at LBC. So looking forward to that, and very thankful that Hannah and Courtney could come on here with us and talk about the 2016-17 academic year. So another one in the books, and we'll look forward to completing this here in the last couple of weeks of the semester. So Bob, thanks as always, and
absolutely.
Go Chargers, go.